Good afternoon, everyone. My name is James Jimmy Hills, and I am the host of GBH Amplifies. James Jimmy Hills, host of Java with Jimmy, and welcome to the Boston Public Library News Feed Cafe here at GBH. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We are getting ready to go live, like literally right now. And what we often do, I have a platform, as I said, called Java with Jimmy, and we would ask you, you can interact here in the studio and applause and just give reaction. But for those of you that are watching online, please feel free to be in the comments. We're going to ask you to also like and, of course, share this live to your page. Today is a very special day for me. This is what I consider the beginning or the kickoff of completing 6 years of maintaining and sustaining this platform. Thank you. It's definitely been a lot of work. It's a labor of love. It's been a challenge. We can point to a lot of accomplishments, especially in 2020, at the beginning of COVID, and we're going to talk more about that in a few minutes. But I am excited today to have a young man with whom I am going to, not literally, figuratively, switch seats. We're going to talk about the last couple of years, but the whole 6 years, but really focus on me as a host, the last couple of years of hosting Java with Jimmy. His name is Yawu Miller. He is a former, you all can give him a hand, please. He is I believe now, a contributing writer to the long-standing Bay State Banner, which is one of the partners here for GBH Amplifies. And also, I believe he started or curated a new publication, online publication called The Flip Side. With that being said, this week in the Banner and a couple of weeks ago, Yawu covered a story in reference to a recent conversation I had with Mayor Michelle Wu. And there was a sentence in there that you know, if you don't know Yawu and I's relationship, you may have not understood, you know, where he was coming from with that sentence. And so we're getting ready to welcome him. He is my guest today, but I'm technically his. But I said, Yawu, in the introduction for the first couple of seconds, can you just clarify for the people that there was no ill intent or anything in that? We kind of snickered, you know, about it. And I appreciate those that were looking out for me, but this is a brother that I trust even before I got in this space of journalism. He reminded me yesterday that it was almost about 10 years or so ago that we were on the Orange Line having a conversation, and I'll mess with him a little bit. Timing is everything, but for these past maybe few weeks or so, when I've really got to talk to him often and share things, he has a lot of historical context and knowledge and just wisdom. It just made sense for me to ask him to facilitate this conversation today. So ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and welcome to GBH Amplifies, Mr. Yawu Miller. All yours, sir.
Thanks, Jimmy.
So can you just, the first line in the article, can you say something to that and then let's just go?
I wrote that you appeared to struggle to put together a question because there was so much going on. And that's what I was really referencing, was that the mayor's relationship with the black community, there's been tension.
Yes.
And it sort of boiled over a few weeks back. And all of a sudden, a bunch of different issues came to the fore. And you were trying to encapsulate all of them. And
That's a good way.
also trying to break through, like, you know, every mayor, every most politicians have a shield around them, yep. You know, where they can present themselves in a certain way. They're not going to say things like, you know, I mean, every politician essentially, except for maybe our current president, has like a little delay between what they're thinking and what they're saying, so that they can say things without offending people, without starting a war, if you're a responsible president, you know, et cetera. And you're trying to punch through that and get a straightforward answer, a from the heart answer. And I don't know that, I mean, I'd like to hear from you whether you thought the answer she gave was straightforward, but it seemed to me like boilerplate.
The answer was straightforward, and you know, everyone knows that the mayor and I have a relationship, and she actually said it that.
I mean, just to sum up the question.
Yeah.
Like, like, how do you respond to what's happening right now, like to all the criticism you're getting?
Right.
Yeah.
I believe that she leaned into sort of the boilerplate or template, you know, of an answer, and I think there was a dual struggle, you know, and we're going to talk, you know, more about that at the end, but I just wanted to allow some time because you're a good brother, and I remember asking you when we talked, I was like, and I came straight out and I said, you know, Brother Yawu, is this a little bit of like a hit piece? And he was like, no, I don't operate, and I've never seen you do anything like that, so that was all there. Let's switch seats, and now you become the host.
All right.
I'm just a little bit nervous.
Yeah, so we had a conversation 10 years ago, and from that, as you referenced, when we ran into each other on the Orange Line, in that conversation, I understood you to be somebody who had a voice, and you wanted to have, you know, to elevate your voice within the city for people. You know, you had ideas, perspectives on things. You understood that your perspectives were valuable. You were looking for a way to bring that to the fore. And 2020, you launched Java with Jimmy. It takes a lot of courage to launch a media platform. What inspired you, and how were you able to do it?
It wasn't a launch. And I don't know if you know this, I literally, on March 23rd, Governor Baker said, hey, you guys need to stay home. We're coming up on that anniversary. And though I worked in the community, I have a background in medicine, pulmonary and critical care medicine on the admin side, and also I worked for the two world's top psychosomatic psychiatrists on the admin side. And so I was watching what was going on, you know, being in community, you kind of have a public health perspective. And I was watching what was going on, and I think the thing was, I realized that a lot of the community did not understand why Governor Baker left the liquor stores open versus, you know, other entities and people not understanding addiction. That next morning with that thought, and us not knowing what this airborne pathogen was, there was something in me because of my public health experience, knowing it was a little bit of a respiratory thing, being in pulmonary critical care, and then being black, you know, understanding that when America catches a cold, the black community gets the flu. I literally got my coffee and went and sat in my office and sat in front of my iPhone, and I went live to get the community ready for what we saw exacerbated. And so, Yawu, Java with Jimmy was not a concept in name and in branding, if I remember right, when memories come up on social media, until maybe like 3 weeks later. I knew I had something. My mother, on March 24th, the official anniversary day, at the end, I was getting ready to wrap up, and I'd been going live for a few days, and she typed, "Will this be an everyday coffee hour?" At that time, I'm like, yeah, 2 weeks, 2 months. And as of March 24th of this year, it'll be 6 years. And it still, every once in a while, baffles me that we've been doing this for 6 years, maintaining, sustaining. It hasn't been easy, but I didn't go live that day with an intent to start Java with Jimmy.
Yeah. So you referenced your history in the medical field.
Yes, sir.
Psychiatry. Mental Health Monday.
Yes, sir.
We're going to go through the days of the week.
Okay, yep.
And, let's check in with you. How are you doing?
So in the moment today, I'm good. Everything's not perfect. I literally walked out the house today and was happy to see a FedEx package with the invoice paid because I got to pay March's rent. And I bring that up because though things are not perfect, I'm an entrepreneur, still struggle financially. I am good as of today. I believe since Juan Jose reminded me that we kicked off my anniversary here 2 years ago, and all of us, have seen and post and, Susan and I and GBH have reconciled and I'm back here. But I realized one day that that was the beginning. I felt rejected. And that was the beginning of me doing some self-examination. And so to answer your question, today I'm doing good. I think the last couple of years, for me to get to good today, my mental health was bad. I remember one day last year, one of my outlets when I get really, really angry is I have to break something expensive. It's an outlet, it's a release. I just, and I remember, I know I'm going to say it wrong. Swarovski, they do the fish,
yeah.
well, but they also do the fish head, the water. Someone gave me that, and I know that is a valuable. It's a red one. Yawu, I looked at that thing for like 2 minutes, and I literally wanted to take it and throw it outside and just see it break. I say that because there were moments in the last couple of years that my mental was not good. I was depressed. I had anxiety. I felt a lot of rejection. I felt betrayed. There is a mental health impact, one with being a public figure. I think there's also reciprocity, and you reap what you sow, because back in the day I used to be a little more, I'm vocal now, but I was a lot more aggressive in my being vocal some years ago. And so I understand there's some reciprocity, or you reap, what you sow as far as being a public figure, open to critique, judgment. And for the general public, I don't have an issue with that. What impacted my mental health, and I'll end with this, was there were a lot of people that I bought on that platform, raised, amplified, supported, some personal, and I went through a period of really feeling rejected, dissed, for lack of better words, and it put me in a state of shadow work. I did a lot of self-examination around, okay, James, what is it about you that allows you to get in these situations, to let people treat you in these particular manners? And it's people that, I'll end with this. I often say that if I have an issue with someone, if I don't care about them and they do something, some people that if they say something, I could care less. It's the people that you know and love and support that kind of turn their back on you and so I'm good today, but it took a lot of work for my mental health to be good. It took a lot of work.
Thanks for that. Testimony Tuesday, something you want to say, something you need to get off your chest?
That, the testimony, I think the mental health is a part of it. My testimony is that it sounds churchy and it's a cliche, but me as James is still here and the platform is still here. I really believe that at one point, I thought the platform was going to shut down because COVID was dissipating. It's still here, obviously. But the testimony is that the platform is still here, despite what I mentioned from Mental Health Monday and some other things. The major testimony is that I've grown, I've evolved, I've learned a lot. The number one paramount testimony for me is impact. I can point to impact. I see in the past few months, since the first of the year, the level of civic engagement on my platform. Followers are going up. New people are commenting and engaging. The testimony of impact, people getting health information, us talking about mental health, raising and amplifying the importance of Black economic development and equity, bringing civic leaders into the Java Cafe to have a different type of conversation. For me, that's the testimony. The bonds and the Java fam and the many families within. Y'all, there are times that I'm talking about a subject, I'm looking at the comments, and I'm thinking they're responding to my comments. They're having whole conversations in the comments about meeting up. Hi, how you doing? Yes, I got that. I got a t-shirt for you. And So the testimony is multifaceted, but it's summed up in the fact that, like, I'm still, as James, here, because there was some part of that Mental Health Monday where I just, ugh. But the platform is still here, and it's growing, and the impact is growing. And that, for me, there's me in the platform, and I think I've embraced that, and I know some people won't agree with this, but it's kind of one and the same. Java with Jimmy, and it is so much of so much of who I am and did when we talked about government and medicine. I realized 2 years into it, Yawu, that being in medicine, working with the ICU department that housed the COVID patients, working for Mayor Menino with Governor Patrick, and I don't know if you noticed, I was a Fed for a few years under the Bush administration, the Administration for Children and Families. All of that coming together 2 years into this, realizing that for the purpose of impact, that's the testimony. That is the testimony.
Right on. We need to know Wednesday. There's a lot of things you know that the community needs to know. One thing.
So I just had a moment, because I often tell my guests they have to describe something in one word. And I just felt the feeling they feel, because you said one thing, and I'm like, oh, this is going to be interesting. The one thing that we need to know, define we, clarifying question. Who's the we?
Your listeners or people who watch this, or the broader audience.
The one thing that we need to know, that despite the circumstances of the times, despite the lack of demonstration about a care for humanity, despite the intentional erasure of the Black community's contributions to this country, despite the attack on those that aren't rich white men, despite all of that, everybody that's being impacted, I believe, have past points of reference for strength. I believe that they have past points of reference of getting through it, and it's not minimizing what's going on. We need to know that, I won't even say this is a glitch, this is a full exposure of system constraints that constrain people who are away from the demographic of rich white men. And we're going to get through this. We are going to get through this. For Black folks, it's Black joy, even though I say that Black joy is Black joy, that anybody can benefit from Black joy. But we're going to get through this. Women are going to get through this. The LGBTQIA2S+ community is going to get through this. Our Afro-Latino population is going to get through this. My hope is the Ukraine. And there are a lot of feelings about this, but what's going on in the Middle East and the disregard for life generally, it's going to be hard. People are still saying that we haven't seen the worst of things yet. We're now in a war. We're already dealing with the economy and tariffs. I think if you put it to one thing, I feel a responsibility, yes, to name where things are, but to highlight and amplify that we are powerful people when we center humanity. And if we move on that humanity, and we don't say this a lot anymore, and it another kind of like cliche, and people are afraid to say it, but love. Love is a foundational thing. I often say even if you have to love from a distance and sometimes practice tough love of humanity is going to get us through this exposure of a system right now.
Maybe so.
You said one thing, and so I'm gonna be a good guest and leave it there.
Thankful Thursday. Now we're at Thursday. What are you thankful for?
I was doing good all along, and then when he said that, that's the one where, and look, people taking pictures, that's the one that hit my heart. I think it goes back to the testimony. I'm thankful for the community that is built. I'm thankful for the resources that we bring to the community. I'm thankful that despite what I mentioned about Mental Health Monday, that I didn't succumb. I could have delved into alcoholism. I could have delved into, you know, just a whole bunch of just trying to relieve things through sex. I could have, when you remember when I was 260, I could have ate myself, you know, being more unhealthy. I'm thankful for life. I'm thankful for this platform. I'm thankful even for the adversity that I've been through the last couple of years, because we are ever evolving, but I'm thankful for these last 2 years because it exposed a lot of myself, and I feel that a lot of that exposure had to happen at that time for me to be able to shake the weight for what's to come. So, you know, I'm glad you didn't say one thing for thankfulness. There's a lot to be thankful for, but it's surmised as life, this platform, a little more simple. My new apartment, I don't know if you saw, about 2 months ago, I went through an incident where I had a landlord that was breaking the law, and I got out. I got out with intention. I made the choice. And about 3 weeks ago, I get a screenshot in the morning of the place that I used to live that burned. There was a big fire. Everybody in that building was homeless and unhoused. And I sat there and thought about that. And a lot of people got on me about this. I believe I would have got out. I would have got out from the fire. But my first thought was, with this platform is so much of who I am, I would have lost everything. My laptops, the interface. And for me, I'll end the thankfulness part is that could have been, that what I mentioned about coming out of this mental health thing and whatnot, had I went through that, I don't know if the success of the last 2 years of my mental would have been sustained. To you know, be unhoused, to lose everything. Yes, thankful for life, but imagine me getting up the next morning, and when I make a choice not to go live, that's one thing. But imagine, I don't know if you can imagine, you can, imagine you not being able to write. Imagine getting up that next morning, and I mean, I could do it from my phone, how I started, but for me not to do the platform the way that I'm used to doing it, that Mental Health Monday would have been a different description. So that is a major, all of that is major thankfulness.
Well, I'm glad you're still here.
Thank you. I'm glad I'm still here too.
Now we're going to move into the freestyle portion of the show where...
And it's whatever Yawu, it's his. What time is it? You got a whole 25 minutes? Yep. Oh, 35 minutes. All right, Yawu.
All right, so you've been on this earth since the 1970s. You've seen Boston go through some changes.
Yes.
What are some of the most consequential changes that you've seen take place in this city in your life?
The most consequential changes I've seen is those who, and Nia said it here last month, and I'll say it in a quick manner, those who have been bought and with the ability to be bossed. I think those, and I'm speaking specifically to our community, the black community, black and brown marginalized communities, but really, it's Melanated March. I know we came out of Black History Month. Let's talk about the black community. By my observation and being in this, you know, for someone referred to me the other day that, you know, Jimmy, we kind of forget that you're approaching an elder. Settling for crumbs, making your personal come up a priority. I believe in capitalism, and I couldn't say that a couple of years ago. You get broke enough and can't pay your rent, your mentality changes. I thank Joey Bennett for this. He taught me, you get the bag and then you do the service. And what he means by that is you get the money, you fund your own service. And so all of that to say that I believe in, you know, paying people their value and for what they're worth. but I think one of the most consequential behaviors in this city is that people settle for crumbs and they get locked in to a system of control that it does not benefit the greater community or the outcome for our community.
There's a lot we could unpack in there.
You got
But our community, the black community in Boston, when you and I were born, it was about 12-15% of the city's population. The city's population was about 1% Latino, mostly from Puerto Rico, and now black population is about 22%. The Latino population is 19 or 20%. Asian population has grown substantially. So we've seen those changes take place in the city. How do you think the change in the city's demographics has changed the politics here, or has it?
The change in the demographics have changed the politics, and I just have to bring it up to this conversation around our migrant brothers and sisters, that, this conversation now of foundational Black Americans, our Afro-Latino, our other of color populations. Overall, I believe it's a good thing, just as simple as the piece of the melting pot. The cultures coming together, building off of one another. In the realm of politics, representation matters. And in representation, who you represent and what your life and your culture represent comes to these elected seats with you. And so in the context of us talking a lot about the Black community, with that number, between the period that you mentioned of when we were born, a couple of years difference there, and now, there was a period where there were a lot more Black Bostonians. And we were making a lot of gains because we had a lot of Black elected officials, we had Black developers, Black millionaires, and so obviously the byproduct or the benefit came back presumably to the Black community. I believe with the melting pot and representation matters, you now have other marginalized communities whose priorities go to these you talked about in the realm of politics. Those marginalizations demonstrate themselves in different marginalized communities. There's some foundational things when it comes to racism and prejudice. I'm going somewhere with this. The priorities that different marginalized communities, as they get representation in political spaces, those priorities go with them. So now you have, where we at one point had a lot of Black elected officials, now you have Black, Latino, LGBTQIA2S+, you have our ADA community represented, and I don't think that's a bad thing. It's just, the Black community, specifically here in Boston, a lot of times works hard, supports other communities and initiatives, gets behind every type of marginalized community's issue. And there's competing priorities for the different marginalized groups, and I think to end this up, it changed the politics in a manner that it is more diverse, but with the diversity comes more things being deterred for the Black community.
All right, I'm going to present a slightly different take on that.
Okay.
And then see how you respond. That there are different strains in Boston's Black community right now. People who represent African descendants of slavery is the term, like people who are Black and their families have always been in the United States since slavery. And then there are black folks from other places, the Caribbean, Africa, Cape Verde, which is part of Africa, etc. I would suggest that going back to the 70s, you had like State Rep Jojo Force was Cape Verdean. Former State Rep Mel King, both his parents were from the West Indies, and forgive me, I don't remember what islands they were from. So my family, like Millers, Jamaica, in Canada. So that, this community has always been heterogeneous. It's mostly been people from the West Indies and Cape Verde who have come into the black community, and then also lots of people from the South. But because Boston's our proximity to whaling, which is what my great-grandfather did for a profession before he settled in Boston, it's always been a melting pot of different types of black folks. And then, so those are two different strains. And I think in the past, like there was probably less diversity of approach and politics within the black community. And you're seeing, like what you're referencing is a sort of a plurality of approaches to how people deal with power, how people deal with, the mayor's office. You're seeing some people from the island of Hispaniola who vote with the mayor most of the time, and then, other folks in the black community, like representing the black community in the city council, the 6-7 that you referenced, where they're, at times pushing against the mayor and some of her more authoritarian impulses.
Go ahead.
So yeah, so that's my perspective. It's like it's a little different, like that the plurality has always been there. It's more pronounced now with different groups, and like we're seeing like that split show up as what you refer to as the 6-7.
It's the 6-7, and
the 6-7 references like the votes that happen in the council, where there's 7 councilors who will reliably vote with the mayor on a controversial subject, and 6 who will reliably push back.
And that's a whole dynamic there. I just want to close that sort of piece. So I believe we are sort of saying the same thing. It is the plurality, as you said, of the different approaches. And as you were saying that, and this is something that on one hand, I think we need to have a come to Jesus conversation about this across the black diaspora. But then on the other hand, I don't know if it's going to further separate us. When we say the black community here in Boston, for me, that is everybody who claims to be black. And
it's extremely heterogeneous.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think from people referring to FBA's, Foundational Black Americans, to those who have always been here since slavery, what happened at the Cass Center when, if you remember, the Republican governors shot a whole bunch of our migrant brothers and sisters across the country to basically set up for this man to get elected again as a narrative. When that happened and Governor Healy transformed the Cass Center into housing for our migrant brothers and sisters, I believe that was I observed the most pronounced what's the word I'm looking for? Cracks within our diaspora, because there was this thing of, I've been here, and these people that were black too can come and get services, and so that's an example of, for me, since then, I've been struggling of how, just within the black community, we figure it out. And then, as you brought up, as the population of Boston has changed with our Asian Americans, other, Latino Americans, and then different people from different places, that is a good thing. It's us figuring out where we align in humanity, no matter the race or ethnicity, and then where we need to, our ADA community or whatever, where we need to specialize in a certain addressing of a marginalization, we do that. The good of the diversity is undeniable. I just don't know if we've all figured out how to play in the sandbox together.
Yeah, I mean, it was, on the one hand, you think like we could use another Mel King because he was able to bring everybody together, whites, blacks,
Yep.
progressive whites, blacks, Latinos, Asians. On the other hand, it's a different Boston. It's the variables in the equation have changed, and also the values have changed. So,
And I mean, as you said, values, one thing, and I don't want to get off, but I was going to say we give it too much credit, but we have to say this. The values have changed, and social media is a part of that,
yeah.
of how people are perceived and presented and whatnot. So
Right.
that's a part of it too.
I
But
think one of the most mind-blowing things was, for me, was that showed how much the city had changed was about 2014, 2013, in the Dominican Republic, the government there ended birthright citizenship for Haitians. And they were trying to deport Haitians. And there's, a long history in the Dominican Republic of Haitians being massacred,
Yep.
being discriminated against. But the Dominican Republic always had birthright citizenship. Anybody born there was automatically a citizen. And all of a sudden they said to people who'd been there for perhaps generations, like, you're not a citizen, you're getting deported.
similar to something recently here.
Exactly. And here in Boston, there were Dominicans who were on board with that, and there was debate. And, in a greater Boston area, there's 80,000 Haitians, that people could look at their neighbors and say, this is what I believe, and take that stand was, it was something, I think, a level of animus that I hadn't seen before within, like, the community of people of color. So, I mean, that was like an early sign of, like, where fractures could
That's the
occur,
word.
types of fractures that could occur, yeah.
I think there's some of that now, and I just, Yawu, with I call them wrong old dump 101, COVID, and this second iteration, first of all, humanity, and then the part of humanity that is racist, that doesn't see the value in those with melanin and speak different languages and whatnot. Within those, different communities, black or whatever, or we're talking about the black community, the diaspora, I don't know what it's going to take for us to figure it out. And that's a simple, figure it out is just a, simple way of saying things. When it comes to what this country has been, and in the last couple of years or since November of 24 again, the aggression in the white supremacy, I would hope that it would drive, again, people back to humanity, because to say Black Lives Matter, to say all of this stuff is interesting. Locally, we have to figure it out, and bringing it back to local, what happened at one thing that really concerned me when we talk about the diaspora or black, I'm just going to say black, is that with all we seeing going on nationally, to experience what we experienced in the early part of this year, without a coalesced group of people to go and say, it's not going down like this. That's an example of where something is missing in us not realizing that we have power. And we're just, I don't know, we're just not, and you and I have talked a little bit offline about this, we're not using it. And I think and I'll end this part here, I think it goes back to the thing of what I was saying about individualism. It's right for us to be individuals. It's right for us to want to look out for our families. It's right for us to want to be able to pay our bills. But when your motive and your goal is just about you, and you can't contribute to the greater collective, by putting, whatever issues aside, that's, as I said, with Trump 1, COVID, and Trump 2, all that we talked about the fractures, something has to give. And what that give is, I mean, is it going to take, we see what's going on over in Iran. Is it going to take, us hearing a boom somewhere close to us for folks to shake and say, hey, now we got to survive and we need to come together? That's the thing that just kind of frustrates me. I didn't mean to go too far off.
No, I'll tell you one area where I see a great deal of alignment is the Massachusetts Black and Latino Caucus. Under its current chair, Representative Vargas from up in Haverhill, they put out the PROTECT Act, which is legislation that would mandate that no local police can do civil immigration reform. It goes a lot farther as far as protecting immigrants than Governor Healey's proposal went. And you see everybody,
They
pretty much
coalesce.
in alignment on that. They're, I think that they're a group that has worked on how they work together. They've done retreats and things, and sort of, how to. I mean, because it's way more heterogeneous than it was back in the '70s when it was just the Black Caucus, right? People from all over the state, Dominicans and Puerto Ricans and blacks, they've kind of figured it out, like how we can find alignment on the issues that we all agree on, and row together. And I think they're showing some power up on the Hill.
I mean, they set a great example. I think about them. I think about the group that Carlos, former state representative Carlos Enriquez, and I believe it was state rep Russell Holmes.
Yeah.
The caucus is the formal state Black and Latino state representatives and state senators. And then Carlos was like, at that time, let's bring in Ayanna and the city of Boston people for electeds of color. And I think that is a good example. We know that the caucus has had some ups and downs, leadership and its functionality. And that's a good thing. But as you were talking, Yawu, I got to be honest, my thought was that reactive? Versus, it's reactively proactive. They're reacting to what's going on and then proactively putting a buffer in place. My thing is, where can, let's talk a little bit about our electeds. Where can our electeds that are and or represent marginalized communities, and let's point one out, Black, where can they be more proactive in education, mobilization, beyond time to vote, and beyond when they need the community to stand with them? And so that caucus was a good example, but I would like to see that trickle down to within their, and I don't know what's going on in other cities and whatnot, but we could use that sort of caucus model here in Boston. Specifically. We could.
I mean, you and I know that electeds of color meet, but those meetings are never public. I've never, witnessed one. I don't know how people, I have no idea how people work together. The legislative caucus is way more public, so.
I've been to one.
And makes one of us.
I've been to one, and it to be fair to our electeds, every group has things like group dynamics. Every group has your louder, your whiner, your leader, your timid, and that is unfortunate. That comes with being in a group, and especially when you're among other leaders, because there's a certain level of ego that elected officials have. They have to, a healthy one. I've attended one of the meetings some years, it was 10 years ago, I think it was like 16, around violence prevention. And group dynamics play themselves out no matter if you're elected in a corporate room or not. And again, I think for them, I'm sitting back and looking at some things. For example, this thing at the beginning of the year with the mayor. As a group, where were they? the caucus did what they did at the state level, but we're talking about Boston. And I don't, the last time I seen our, and I hate to do this, but there's the electeds of color and then there's the black electeds. And the last time I saw the electeds of color come together in front of the State House before the thing with the caucus with immigration was during COVID.
Yeah.
That was 5 or 6 years ago. Young people have died. The economy is interesting for Black Boston. Suicide is up, with Black men. Dr. Basola just put out the report the other day about the disparities of health disparities with the Black community. There was a report before that talked about the life expectancy. Ayanna talked, Congresswoman Presley for years has been talking about the bus ride from Dudley from Nubian to Harvard Square. It goes back to what I said before. What will it take for this cadre of our current electors of color / Black to come together, work through those group dynamics? You don't have to, Thaddeus Mayo said this to me some years ago. You don't always have to be unified, but certain situations and certain power moves takes a certain uniformity.
Yeah.
And I loved it a couple of times you've given different perspective because one, you got a wonderful lens, to see things, but I don't want to sound doom and gloom, but I'm somewhat connected. I haven't heard or seen any coalescing around a lot of Black issues. And again, not to beat P3 to death, but that was a facade that about a week after that, on a Monday night, on a Monday morning, late morning, laying in my bed, I remember sitting there and the realization of Black leadership eroding in Boston hit me. And I sat there and I said, well, a couple of people, maybe they went, what if there was Yawu, I would have preferred to call you, Danielle Johnson, Carlos Enriquez, and Charlotte Gola-Ritchie and said, how dare y'all go to the mayor and not take a big group with you? At least there was that siloed and that realization. And again, this ain't no cap, or as young people say, no cap. This isn't anything about, my concern with my relationship with the mayor or whatever. System constraints, no matter who's in that seat, we need to figure out how to better utilize and fix the fractures within electeds of color and Black leadership.
I mean, I think it's interesting because your political career, formal political career, starts under
I don't have a
Menino.
political career.
Okay.
I don't.
Career in
I'm messing.
politics, your career in
Yeah.
politics
Got you. Yep.
Starts with Menino, and at that time, there's a Mayor Menino, kind of, could be very much like makes decisions and then announces decisions, and any community meetings that happen thereafter are over how the decision gets implemented, not whether or what the community wants to do. That gets him in trouble with Black elected officials. Within the city council, you had something called Team Unity, which Chuck Turner, Charles Yancey, Felix D'Arroyo, and Sam Yoon, so Black, Latino, Asian people. There was just 4. And that was the only 4 people, on the council who are people of color. And it's, I think then it was easier for 4 people to get along and sort of agree on things than it is now that there's 6 people of color on the 13-member council. Is it 6?
It is. Okay, let's go through it. People of color: Henry, Roofsey, Julia, Brian, Culpepper. I'm doing like a visual of the chamber. Culpepper, we said Julia.
Let's say 6.
Okay, 6
out of 7, right? Yeah, it's a little bit harder. I mean, it's a lot harder for them, I think, to agree on things. They're Pepin, right? They don't.
Pepin, yes.
They don't get along. That's number 6, right? They don't caucus together. And there's a split like that.
It's
three of
Julia,
them-
Bryan, and
three-
Culpepper, and then
And then-
Henry, Rusey, and Pepin.
Yeah, are like on opposite sides around the mayor. And it's interesting because Mayor Wu, when people asked her who her political inspirations are, she mentioned Elizabeth Warren and she mentioned Mayor Menino, who she worked with previously.
That's where we met. Yep.
And, you know, because between Menino and Wu, there's Walsh. Walsh comes from the legislature. He, because of his years on the legislature, perhaps, he has like this notion of the power of legislative bodies, respect for legislators, respect for local representatives. He himself was a local representative. So he would not take a stand or move on something if he didn't have at least some level of buy-in from local elected officials. Very different style from Menino. And now with Wu, it's a style that seems more like Menino, where there's, like she makes an announcement, we're going to redo White Stadium. And then, she says, we've had like 20 community meetings. All those things happen after the decision was made. The meetings are basically, here's what we're doing. What do you think? The mic's shut off, So it's like there's a lack of process, perhaps that is very much an interesting parallel to what we witnessed in the early years of Mayor Menino. So it's a different group of elected
Very
officials
different.
of color.
Yep.
But a similar dynamic and just a different. And so what you're surfacing is it's like a very different reaction to the same thing, the community was dealing with back in the 1990s.
So it's as I said before, this is more systemic. We know that we have, by charter, the strongest mayoral seat, if not in the world, in the country. And so, and I've said this before, and it's not an excuse, it's not a pass for things that we see that don't look good for the black community or marginalized communities. But Michelle is doing what she's supposed to do as a politician. As you said, the city council president in them years from 12 to 20, you did not become the city council president without Thomas and Menino signing off. It just did not happen. Maybe when Team Unity was there, they may have disrupted a few things, but when you talk about, pages from Menino and our current mayor, Mayor Wu, there are similarities. And I've said this publicly before, there is twofold. That is being allowed to happen for two reasons, or because of two reasons. One is that election and how that resulted in running uncontested, and now, you just got this, power about you that you ran uncontested, you won by a large number. That's a whole nother.
Calvin Feliciano said on your show,
What did he say? Shout out
it's
to
a
Calvin.
mandate, or it looks like a mandate.
It looks like a mandate, but
I'm not going to use his other quote.
Yeah, I can't remember. Shout out to Brother Calvin. And we got like 2 minutes left. What that happened, the reason things are going the way they are now is because we have not provided enough consequences that if you don't switch your ways, these are the consequences.
Yeah.
And right now,
I want to interject here real quick, just the theory, right? Bigger city population, right? There's more people in Boston, but lower voter participation.
yes, that's a part.
And I would say as voter participation has shrunk in Boston, the percentage of city workers, city workers are always going to vote. They're a larger share of the
I know where you're going. The population shrunk, but city workers are.
Yeah, they're a larger share of the electorate. They have more power. But another thing that's happened is that the balance of power shifted from Southie and West Roxbury to Rosendale, Jamaica Plain, Ward 19.
Yes.
Like higher
Is that the progressives?
voter percent.
JP?
Yeah,
JP, yep.
White liberal votes. People who weren't voting, 10, 15 years ago are now voting in greater numbers. They're more aligned with Wu, but not necessarily aligned with candidates like Kendra Lara or Ricardo Arroyo. They're not aligned with the sort of the left wing of the progressive wing of like the city council, but they're kind of aligned more with centrist liberal policy.
You know, we're going to have to do another part of this, but that whole term progressive, to learn that started with our, you know, some of our ancestors and still present, the Black Panther Party, talking about the term, and it got usurped to now, because when you talk politically, when you talk about the term progressive, what comes to mind to me is white queer women. When you say progressive, in the leadership.
It goes back to, I mean, the term goes back to the early 1900s, but yeah.
Okay. I had heard someone refer to its push and it getting usurped. It's push from the Black Panther Party about progress for us, and then it got somewhat usurped. And when you think about an agenda of liberals and progressives, and listen, that's national. Tip O'Neill said that all politics are local, so let's bring it to local. When it comes to a progressive movement, and what I just said about my perception of the leadership of it being white queer women, who is in leadership's ear that's representing our demographic? Who's in leadership's ear that's representing the single mother? Who's in leadership's ear that is representing those that can't afford a bike and be up in the, oh, no offense, because I pulled up on Yawu today. He was on his bike. But my point is here that, and as we're going to get ready to close out in a minute, we talked before about representation matters. And in this progressive movement and liberal and whatnot, representation of those that this movement supposedly is fighting to impact. How are you fighting for marginalized populations and you're not in this cycle of conversing and making sure that they're driving the agenda? You think, oh Jesus, this goes back to something you were saying before. You thinking you know and putting your agenda on a people that it's not a good thing. Yawu, I'm sorry, we got to get ready to wrap up. I'm getting the signal. Yawu, thank you. Give Yawu a hand for being here today. We do have to get ready to wrap up. I appreciate Yawu being here today. This is the kickoff of celebrating 6 years. No big events like we've done in the past. We'll keep you abreast. Make sure you follow Java with Jimmy. Go to YouTube and look up GBH Community and to find out about our other partners. Every Thursday, GBH Amplifies a wide variety of community voices, diverse voices. There will be at some point a part 2 of this with Brother Yawu to unpack some of the things. Thank you all for being here, and we'll see you next month on April. Oh, it's on my sheet. We'll see you next month on April. And my senior producers on April 2nd, next month here at the News Cafe at Copley Library. Thank you all for being here.